Hello there, and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4. Today, I got you a fresh ice build because, lately I was going back through all the elements and ice was naturally on the list. I went for Reavers because I feel like they have a glorious combo in ice, and I'm going to show you why. So, first up, let's go over the cultural and body traits. I went for Arctic adaptation, which is neat but interchangeable. The snow earth shaping is pretty cool though, as you have very early access to that. Keen-sighted and arcane focus is showing off our ranged focus in our racial traits. All frontliners don't need too many extra traits to be working on well. As Reavers, we use the marking and focused aggression technique, which means melee people mark enemies, and marking lets us hit harder, 10% more damage per mark stack, and easier to hit as well, which is really, really nice. Our build utilizes both of these quite well, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. Cultural traits, ritual cannibals for the extra mana and the soft support on your frontliners. It is just really that good. Generally, I love corpse eating as something that allows you also to shut down necromancer builds. It's a very, very versatile skill. But here we really take it for fresh influx of mana. The extra food on your cities is also really nice, nevertheless. Mana channelers to make sure that we can summon a lot of elementals and all the other things can be paid as well. I personally feel like this is one of the traits that has a lot of power, and I wouldn't know what to pick else. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you feel differently. Okay, Tones. Obviously, we are starting out with Cryomancy because we are an ice build. Frost arrows goes into our skirmishes and or mage locks, which is really, really cool, as that means we get the ability to hit harder with our ranged and skirmishes as well. This is really cool. Slowing is applied by ranged attacks, and we get extra damage on frost blades against slowed units. So you really have that wicked synergy by slowing your enemies and then hitting harder. Especially skirmishers feel that because they can either apply the status or feast on it, which is really cool. We also have other frontliners which enjoy that as well. We also have the Lesser Snow Spirit, which is for me pretty much a bread and butter summoned unit here. I replaced most of my Harriers with these. Freezing Burst is a very low chance to freeze and has a very high cooldown, so these guys are more a frontliner than a backliner. So if you want more ranged attacks, use the cultural units instead. We also gain White Witches, which are our bread and butter battle mages for this build. They're really, really versatile, as they do have a decent baseline damage. Since we have magic focus, we do deal 15% more, you feel that here, and we gain Freezing Blast, which allows us to shut down troops very, very often. The very low cooldown on this spell is really wicked, in combination with being this only a 1-point action. White Witches are really nasty and good tools of crowd control. We gain on top of that Ice Coffin as basically as a battlefield spell. It's basically like Freezing Blast. It's very similar, just a little bit less damage. And Blizzard, which is a really, really nasty world map spell. Not only does it deal a decent chunk of damage, it lowers the status resistance of the enemies, which means it's easier to freeze them. You can utilize that before difficult battles when you aim at the toughest banner of the enemy. Good stuff. School of Cryomancy allows us to gain some extra knowledge and mana for snow and ice provinces. Here you notice that the Arctic adaptation will feed your city quite well. Build one of these as soon as you can. This is such a powerful building, you won't regret. In the other tier 1, we're going on over to Tome of Faith. I went through a lot of thinking, but Tome of Faith is very, very powerful for us in many, many aspects. For one, we gain a powerful upgrade in our support abilities. We gain the Chaplains, which have single target heal, just like our own cultural overseers, but they can also boost up the damage of a single person. All in all, they are much better healers than our overseers. Our overseers have other qualities I'm going to go over later, but altogether, these guys are your go-to healers in this build, and you really will notice how much heavy lifting they can do. Staves of Mending powers up all of our healers, so also overseers gain a touch heal. Their heal is already touch heal, so I find Faith highly synergistic with the Reaver Culture in general. Faithful Whispers is pretty much a lost cause on this build, except if you want to buy yourself a couple of Whispering Stones. See here I did, because you can. And the rest of the spells, Wrath of the Faithful and Army Heal, I don't know. I'm not a big fan, personally. Convents are really cool for positive stability cities. They are a little bit costly, though, and pay off themselves really only after 2 levels of city stability. Before that, it's just a +5/+5 for a lot of costs, so most of the time you're better off with something else on this build. Abbeys. They crank out knowledge out of farms. So with this combination, we can produce a lot of goodness. This gets even better later down the road when we gain another special province increase, special province improvement that feasts off of farms as well. So farms are a really, really good thing for this build. In this scenario, it's more knowledge. Knowledge is always good. With tier 2, we step into fertility, which is kind of an odd choice for an ice build, but I went for it because it's just so good for it. We gain Summon Nymph. For one thing, I know we have yet another supporter, but you know, if you go Staves of Mending, you might as well take the full mileage out of that one. And Nymphs are really, really massive units. For one, they have a really powerful 1 hex radius heal spell and status purge, which is really nice. And they also get to dominate enemies, which is really cool. Because our overseers basically can do this as well, and we're doubling down on this gameplay with this tome. Reavers are one of the best cultures to utilize the fertility tome, interestingly. We also gain Animate Flora. Due to the trait we picked, the one with the cheap summonings, look at this, 8 mana. It's just 8 mana for a tier 2 unit. It's amazing. This spell is so crazy because, you know, these things, they die quite quickly, but they're cheap. You can summon them in the worst situations, basically. When you are so low on mana, you still can crank out these boys. So that is really, really something. Don't underestimate the floral stingers. They are really, really, really cool. We also gain Blossom of Life, which is one hell of a regeneration blanket. I mean, 2 hex radius is a lot. So you can flick that on your army and you're basically immune against all those huge AoE spells that come with moderate damage. You just heal that away. That's 18 points of healing per turn. So enjoy. Temple of Fertilities are, well, if you want bigger cities, I mean, we are good at getting big cities, so this enhances that. And Restore the Land, I don't know, you can create yourself grasslands for more farms. This is interesting insofar as you want a lot of farms, and if you have terrain around yourself that you can't icify properly, it can have its use. Bountiful Fields give us again more bonus out of grasslands, so we can utilize that. Since we can create grasslands and therefore farms, there is a synergy between that. You shouldn't go for the ice adaptation though, because of this. Because, well, you can only have either of these, so this one is something that you will not utilize too long. So it's kind of anti-synergistic with the cryomancy, so don't lean on it too much. But you can have, on some cities where you don't have the icification done, already get a little bit of profit. But yeah, I think this is the rest of this book is better for you. Tome of Mayhem now for the Mark of Misfortune to get yourself some sweet, sweet debuffs when you're hitting enemies by ranged attacks. This leads to a lower damage profile on your enemy, which is really good. We also gain Gremlins, so we can now summon tier 2 skirmishes. You see, I really went down the skirmishing and support route here again, because I love skirmishes and supports. It's a really, really wicked combo. And yeah, what about these? What's the special? They have good damage on strike, but they can knock people out of their defense modes and turn them 180 degree, which means you can immediately trigger a flanking attack out of that, which is really powerful. We can also put that Misfortune as a blanket hex. I personally like Inside Revolution though a lot for this build because we are Chaos and Order affinity. We can basically power play here the Call of Chaos pacification combo, which is Pretty wicked. So, beyond that, when we hit tier 3, we're going to go obviously for the Cold Dark Tome, unlocking for us the big deal Snow Spirits. These are the evolved ones, so you don't need to cling too much to your small Snow Spirits. They're good throwaway units. Their big brothers are very powerful hitters. Their freeze is very reliable, still a pesky cooldown though, and they can teleport around also with an AoE freeze effect. The thing about these boys is they are singular units. That means no matter how low their HP gets they deal full damage all the time. Unlike their smaller brethren, which lose 1/3 of their damage per third of HP they lose, which is an insane difference here. Altogether, these guys cost not much mana, and they are really powerful. Their only downside is that you need the facility to summon them. We gain Thrustling Transformation, which makes us immune against freeze, which is really good, and our Arctic terrain is not bothering us anymore. Marching Winter will create yourself a marching Arctic terrain. You should do this after you have built the provinces that you want to flick on your city, because you see you can't build everything on Arctic terrain anymore. This could be counteracting at some points. At least that's what I do, and I've never been unhappy with it. Flash Freeze allows us to create again Arctic terrain and inflict even more status resistance debuffs. So we have two spells. We can stack up to -7 status resistance debuff. That's pretty wicked. Frost Spires are even more knowledge, and they produce more knowledge for snowy and icy provinces. This leads to the fact why Fertility's province improver is only a temporary thing, which you can use though for the mana. That's why I keep talking about it so much. It's good for the early and mid game, but after this phase is over, you should really freezify everything with your Frost Spire School of Cryomancy combo. So that's at least my personal standpoint. The other tier 3 then is Pandemonium, because we're really good at utilizing this. Havoc Magic gives our battle mages and supporters really a nasty edge. And with Vessels of Chaos, we finally reach the point where we can get a lot of boom out of all these statuses that we inflict. It's easy to inflict 3 statuses with this culture. We can slow, we can freeze, we can mark. That's alone 3 already. So there's more in that. Sundering defenses and such. Insanity with these spells here is also a thing. Random stuff as inflicted. Which leads us to the Chaos Eater, which can point blank strip these effects for damage and healing for himself. Which is really cool. I mean, I don't know. This thing is just amazing. It is very well armored. It is cheap because of our setup, and enough said. It's a really wonderful little thing. After that, you get to choose to go for Calamity if you have it available, because, Ghostfire is not counteracting freezing, because Ghostfire doesn't, replaces and counts as burning, but isn't removed by frozen or wet, so they don't negatively interact with one another. But if you should be in the situation that you can't go for that direction, well, things are a little bit odd for this build, because as you see here, our affinities are spread all over the board, which means we can't really go deeper into this direction. We will end up with 4 shadow affinity after reaching Cold Dark, which means the tier 4s here are not reachable for us, which is, in all honesty, not that much of a big deal, because what to say, the Calamity Tome is the only one that really massively synergizes with an ice build. Beyond that, I merely found the Oblivion Tome to be quite appealing, and beyond that, I fail to see options that are really good for an ice build. We have access to the fire tomes, the Demon Gate and Chaos Channeling, but they don't do us any good. So, therefore, my personal recommendation is to backtrack instead and skip all the tier 4 shenanigans altogether with this build. This sounds like a weird choice, but these unit enchantments that you can get out of Evocation, for example, Lightning Focus and Lightning Blades is amazing, as is the combination of Lightning Torrent and Fulmination, or you could also go even as far as picking up Zeal, because Legion of Zeal and Inspiring Chant is an amazing combination there. The thing about this build is that you will have constantly the problem that, well, I don't know, the ice build isn't fully finished by this company. There is there is no pinnacle in ice. After the Great Dark, the Cold Dark Tome, the whole road stops. So therefore, my tip remains like that. Backtrack into whatever tomes you like to go for, and boost up the performance of your troops by that, because you are at peak performance. The only downside that you would have in this scenario would be a lack of high tier units. That is why I really recommend for this build to have Ways of War enabled to get into the Tome of Calamity, because this is what we have affinities for, easy. And the Calamity Dragon gives you the tier 5 unit that you require. If you don't have the Tome of the Ways of War add-on, it sucks to play ice these days, as it isn't as competitive as. Because currently, I would really recommend to go into Calamity and then the rest of the game backtrack into those low tier tomes, which give you tasty add ons that work well for the remainder of your build and just get those super strong cultural units. Okay, lots of talk about the tomes, but that is because this back end of this build is a little bit weirder than the others. Roster-wise, though, we're very, very straightforward. Harriers, like I said, I personally don't play them too much because the Castnet is more available, but beyond that, the Ice Elementals personally outshine these massively. Mercenaries are your spear troops and the best you will get for this build. Their major sales point is drive back, which is amazing as it pushes back enemies, relieves the pressure off of troops, and allows you to shoot back. It never hurts to have a handful of these, but they die quite quickly. When the tier 2 comes, we gain Overseers and Chaplains, and this is, in the Overseer lies a power why we can dominate this with this build still, because on paper it looks quite bad maybe, but subdue is insane. As you see, you can subdue things that are immobilized, frozen, or stunned. The thing is, we can inflict such insane amounts of status resistance reduction that we have an easy game subduing whatever we want. So you can now either hire things via your overseers with war spoils, or you hire things with your nymphs via mana, because their domination spell is the same. It is possible due to the heavy status resistance debuffs that we can give. Mostly. Apart from that, the overseers are damage-wise super bad. They are really the worst among the worst supporters damage-wise, but they can blind and they do mark with their ranged attacks. Besides that, they have a sick touch heal, and yeah, really, hire whatever you want with these guys. The chaplains, I already went over them, so I don't want to explain more about these. Mage locks are excellent ranged attackers. They do so much damage, they don't need too many enchantments. They get an enchantment, a few enchantments nevertheless, and yeah, take aim and fire. These guys are so good backliners, and there's nothing bad about them. They're really good against beefy and chunky enemies, whereas the White Witches shine as crowd control sources. So you basically utilize your backline out of Overseers to dominate enemies, Chaplains to support your skirmishes in the front line, a couple of mercenaries to hold back what breaches through, and White Witches to control what tries to breach through. There is also on the last tier, obviously, the Dragoon, which is the apex of war skirmishes. He can attack and move. He can shoot each turn. It's our best skirmisher troop that we can train, and together with the ice elementals, they give you all the damage that you require. This build does not play in proper formations, and therefore mage lock cannons are, I don't know, a high risk asset. I personally would recommend to spend your war spoils instead into hiring from the enemy side, because that is what this build can do insanely well. We're just so good at raising people, and the nymphs can seduce without any preparations, but it's only a 60% chance. Whereas for supporters, the overseers, have a 90% chance. But since these are tier 3 and our overseers are tier 2, well, it evens out sort of when the tier of the victim grows higher. So if you want to dominate a high tier target, pack a couple of overseers and nymphs on them, and eventually you'll have them. Snow spirits are really, really powerful on that end, and we want as many unit enchantments as available, the usual shtick. What is really worth mentioning is that we don't want to stress out too much on a formation fight on this. Therefore, I went with the leader for Mortal Champion that gives us command, because that makes our entire mobility game way more flexible. I went also for a Ritualist because it just pays off to have tons of heal and support for this build, because that makes everything work a lot more smooth. Overall, your goal in combats is just to kill off whatever is going to be dangerous to you, and then just bring in skirmishes and spears in between wherever necessary. Heroes therefore can be either further backliners to nuke stuff as it when it goes into be just fought off, or massive juggernauts of frontliners. Defenders would also be really good because you have one hell of a backline, and with a few of these guys you can do a lot. The really, really major takeaway for this build is that whatever looks tasty for your own side, go and recruit it. This is what really shines on this build, because usually the Reavers don't have that ample supply of immobilization. But, you know, ice magic. Enough said. So in that regard, you are really, really powerful. What you're not so powerful at is in your early game. I really felt like the early game of this build is pretty lackluster, but once you have that Mayhem Pandemonium combo going, you're nigh unstoppable. The thing is just that against AI, the flood of crowd control that you can apply on the enemy will make it practically impossible to really hurt you, because you just have too many ways to shut down the stuff that is ought to bring you down. You have too many ways to heal up what got whittled down. You have AoE heals, single target heals, regeneration, you name it. And therefore, you just need to freeze down whatever breaches your front line and take them down afterwards. What's also really fun about this build is that you have the freedom to just print a couple of low-tier troops, Harriers, and White Witches, and a couple of Ice Elementals, and try your luck how far you get. Always recommendable to have a Blizzard or the Flash Freeze in the backhand for a difficult fight. When you fight a really nasty troop stack, aim for the nastiest of them and pelt them before you engage with those map spells to make them super susceptible, or use that combo to make it super easy to dominate tier 4 or tier 5 units. There's a lot of power hidden behind these strategies. It's only a shame that the bountiful fields are eventually useless. I'm really sad about that, because initially the grasslands combo was really good, but once you icify everything, it is not anymore. You therefore want to put up a lot of farms while it's possible, and then spread out the ice and enjoy that big knowledge income. Biggest weaknesses that I've discovered are a real struggle to get the mana flowing. Therefore, the ritual cannibal thing is really working the charm, and overall a desperate hunger for gold. But that is not a new thing. When you're playing this, aim for a lot of war, because war is what you thrive in. You can utilize the knowledge extraction thingy, you can easily conquer several cities, but what I personally find extremely fun, since we have a foot in the door with the Order, very early on even, we can go for a Court of Whispers combination with all those Whispering Stones, crank out a lot of knowledge, and stay pretty informed about what the enemy does. There is a lot of speed on this build. The only thing that I am a little bit sad about is that without Ways of War, I don't see a real late game for this that is on par with the other late games. But against the AI, it'll still work because you just can crowd control everything. And due to the fact that you're just lowering the enemy's status resistances, you can even crowd control the higher tiers pretty decently. So that's that. Enjoy while it still works. I really hope that the Calamity Tome doesn't get nerfed into the ground. I really hope that one day we get a proper late game for the Ice faction, because, you know, if you could reach the Tome of the Stormborn, that would be probably a way too. But beyond making the enemy wet, it does not really do much for you. So, yeah. I hope you enjoy, nevertheless. Leave me some comments down below what you want to see as well. And of course, leave a like, leave a subscribe. Consider checking out the playlist down below. Feel free to support the channel and consider me thankful for everything you do. So, have a wonderful day and see you soon.